Hello there.
Today's D&D topic, the Grung. The Grung are basically frog people. This is a Grung, which shouldn't be confused with the Bullywug, which is a different, bigger type of frog person, or the Gripply, which is just as small as the Grung, but doesn't have teeth. Yes, Grung have teeth. Let that disturbing image settle in for a moment. Grung begin life as tadpoles, which take about 3 months to develop into something roughly humanoid, and then another 6 to 9 months to become full adults. They can live up to 50 years. They're amphibious, as you'd expect, which means that they can't let their skin dry out. So avoid the desert unless you want to die. They're native to jungles, tropical forests, swamps, and live primarily in chult. They often live in crude shelters, typically made inside of dead trees. And while this would be good camouflage, it's unlikely that you'll wander unknowingly into Grung territory. They clearly mark their borders by stringing up the dead bodies of their enemies as a warning sign for any trespassers. If you do come across a tribe and they don't kill you, it's only because they plan to enslave you. Grung keep their slaves in crude pits covered in wooden bars, and lace their slaves' food in poison in order to make them more lethargic and docile. Sadly, Grung don't have big long tongues. Yeah, I know. Frogs don't actually have the absurdly long tongue that we see in cartoons, but in real life, a frog's tongue is roughly 1/3 of their body length. If you scale that up to the size of a human, that'd be a tongue about as big as our forearm, which is still pretty impressive. On the plus side, or the negative side if you happen to be fighting one, Grung do have toxic skin. In fact, Grung come in many different colors and varieties, and each color has its own toxin. Disclaimer: this is a flavor thing more than a game mechanics thing. According to the character creation rules in One Grung Above, you only apply the poison condition to those you touch. That said, ask your DM and plead the rule of cool. May the dice ever be in your favor. Anyway, each color also has its own caste. The green Grung are the lowest in the caste system. They're the workers, warriors, and hunters. And their skin toxin makes it so that their victim has a very hard time moving. Next up are the blue Grung, the artisans, merchants, and domestic workers. For some odd reason, their skin makes it so that people yell uncontrollably. Not that they're in pain, they just yell. The purple Grung are middle management. They rule over the blue and green ones. Well, not rule per se, more like keep happy. They're basically the HR department. And their skin toxins make their victims get very, very thirsty. The red Grung are the scholars and magic users. Grung refer to them as wildlings. They often act as the tribal shamans and priests. Their toxins make you feel like you're starving. The orange Grung are the elite warriors and sacred guardians, and their toxins affect your mind, making you no longer trust your allies. It's kinda like a bad drug trip with paranoia. And the gold Grung, well, they're the guys in charge. Actually, the women in charge. Most tribes are matriarchal. The females are bigger and stronger than their male counterparts. And as for their skin toxins, it charms whoever it comes in contact with. It also gives the victim the unique ability to speak Grung, which, as you can imagine, is a language of croaks and ribbits. It should be noted that Grung poison loses potency almost immediately, once it's no longer on the skin. So some humanoids have taken to harvesting these toxins and using them as magical dyes. Green Grung dye, if applied to a person's hands and feet, greatly increases their ability to climb and jump. It is said to be highly painful, though. Blue Grung dye amplifies sound. If it's applied to hair, and said person shakes their head, the combined amplified vibrations of those 100,000 or so strands of hair will create a deafening shockwave of force. And the purple dye makes things sopping wet. They continuously generate purple-colored water that will stain whatever it touches. It may sound useless, but I think it makes for a pretty good prank. The effects of red, orange, and gold Grung dyes are unknown. The Grung do, or more accurately, did, have a god. Nang Nang was one of the 9 trickster gods of Chult that was killed by the Lich Asarak. Due to how these gods were killed a long time ago, and are nothing more than a memory now, not much is known about Nang Nang, except we do know of their dislike of the Kamadan. The Kamadan is a weird kind of leopard that has snakes coming out of its shoulders and has a sleeping gas breath attack. Despite their being dead, many Grung continue to worship Nang Nang, and I feel like it's reasonable to assume that many Grung dislike Kamadans, partially because Nang Nang did, and partially because Kamadans sound frickin' terrifying. Now, I have a conspiracy theory when it comes to the Grung's caste system, because when they're born, they're tadpoles and all of them are the same color, a dull greenish gray. But they are quickly separated based on their parents and their appropriate castes. Each caste has its own pool, which the tadpoles are put into to grow and develop into adults. But the thing is, if you're an adult Grung and you do something monumentous or heroic, you can be put into a new caste. This involves a sacred operation where they dye the skin a new color. And my theory is, the initial vats that they put the tadpoles in is full of different dyes, a dye for each caste. I believe that the red Grung and above have lied to everyone else, and have made it so that their society is so entrenched in tradition that they'll never think to second-guess how arbitrary their government is. Good thing that this is just fantasy and not real life, though. Right, guys? Side note, the Yuan-ti, a race of snake people, love candied Grung eggs. It's considered a delicacy. See you next time!
Bye, everybody!